Lily Carter had always been the underdog, but when she risked her entire savings on a rusted military tank, even she didn't know how far that gamble would take her. What started as a simple restoration project soon spiraled into something far bigger, as she uncovered a hidden secret inside the tank that would change everything. It wasn't just the tank that was broken, it was the world she thought she knew. Before we dive into this unbelievable journey, let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode takes a turn you won't see coming. Let's get started. Lily Carter stood outside her small, cluttered garage, staring at the rusted hulk of what was supposed to be a military tank. The giant wheels, the steel plating, and the faded camouflage were all she could see. She had drained every last penny of her savings to purchase this relic. To the world, it was a hunk of scrap metal. To Lily, it was an opportunity one she couldn't afford to pass up. She wasn't new to risk. As a mechanic, she'd learned to live on the edge. It wasn't the car she worked on that scared her. It was the bills piling up in the back office, the debt from years of trying to keep her father's dream alive in a world that no longer seemed to care about small-town mechanics. Her father's legacy weighed heavily on her. He'd passed the shop down to her with the same hope he'd always had, to make something meaningful out of what others threw away. But now, the hope felt like a burden. Lily wiped her greasy hands on the faded blue overalls she'd worn since high school. Her shop wasn't glamorous. It was cramped, filled with tools that had seen better days and cars with problems more expensive than their worth. But it was hers, and it was the one thing she'd never give up, no matter how hard it got. She turned back to the tank. The man who sold it to her had been vague about its history. A retired military officer, a guy who seemed to be in a hurry. He had practically thrown it onto the back of her flatbed, along with a stack of old paperwork that smelled like decades of dust. "A little project for you," he'd said with a grin. "You've got the skills. Now make something of it." At first, she'd hesitated. Who in their right mind would invest all their savings into a piece of outdated military equipment? But she'd seen something in it, something her father would have seen. It wasn't just a tank. It was a story, a challenge, a way to prove to herself and everyone else that she could make the impossible happen. The sound of the flatbed truck's engine revving in the distance pulled her from her thoughts. It was time. The tank had arrived. As the truck backed into the yard, Lily stood tall, her arms crossed, and a steady gaze on the mangled machine that was now hers. The sunlight glinted off its battered surface, but there was something powerful in its presence. Despite its state of neglect, it felt like it still held something, some hidden purpose, waiting to be unlocked. The truck driver jumped down and wiped sweat from his forehead. "You sure about this?" he asked, his voice tinged with skepticism. "This thing's a mess." Lily gave him a determined nod. "I've seen worse," she said with a faint smile. "Let's get it inside." As the driver carefully unloaded the tank, Lily felt a strange pulse of excitement. She didn't know exactly what she was getting into, but she could feel it in her bones. This wasn't just any project. There was something about this tank that felt different. The moment the driver drove away, she was alone with it. Her gamble, her investment, her challenge. The silence in the yard seemed to stretch, thick and heavy. Lily stood in front of the tank, hands on her hips, squinting at the machine in the fading light. She couldn't ignore the voice that whispered in her mind. What if you're wrong? What if this is a waste of everything? But she shook it off. She'd never been one to play it safe. She grabbed a wrench from her toolbox, kneeled beside the tank, and began working. Her hands knew what to do. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the garage filled with the comforting sounds of tools clanging, metal shifting, and the steady rhythm of progress. She wasn't just fixing a tank. She was rebuilding herself. By the third day, Lily had stripped away the tank's outer layer of grime and rust, revealing the cold, unforgiving metal beneath. It was worse than she had imagined: welds that had cracked, parts that hadn't moved in years, and a structure that seemed to groan under its own weight. But even as she stood there, covered in oil and sweat, she felt a spark of determination. Her shop was quiet now, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead, and the soft ticking of tools the only sound breaking the stillness. Her thoughts often drifted back to her father, to the days when this place had been filled with laughter, optimism, and the scent of fresh grease. She had inherited his legacy, but the weight of it was becoming more overwhelming with each passing day. She was holding on to a dream, but sometimes the dream felt like it was slipping through her fingers. "Focus, Lily," she whispered to herself, brushing a lock of hair out of her face and taking a long breath. The tank in front of her was more than a project, it was her future. It was the chance to prove to herself and everyone around her that she wasn't just playing around. She could do this. The tools on the workbench were scattered in a mess of haphazard arrangements, but she picked through them with purpose, grabbing what she needed. The first step was cleaning out the interior. Lily removed the seats with surprising ease. They were old, cracked leather, and the smell of mildew made her stomach turn. But as she peeled the layers away, her fingers brushed against something strange, a piece of metal that shouldn't have been there. Lily froze. It was a compartment hidden beneath the seat, masked by years of dirt and disrepair. She knelt down and, with careful hands, pried at the edges of the metal. The air around her seemed to thicken, charged with anticipation. Her pulse quickened as she slid the compartment open. Inside, she found an old, leather-bound notebook, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. She hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to touch it. There was something about this discovery that felt significant, as if she had just crossed some unspoken boundary into a story she wasn't supposed to uncover. But the temptation was too strong. She picked up the notebook, its cover cracked and worn, and carefully flipped it open. The first page was filled with handwritten notes in neat, precise handwriting, maps, coordinates, and cryptic annotations. It didn't make any immediate sense to her, but the weight of it was undeniable. This wasn't just the notebook of a soldier or mechanic. These were the kinds of notes that only someone with a deeper purpose would make, a purpose that involved more than just fixing tanks. She kept reading, her eyes scanning the pages quickly but with mounting curiosity. As she flipped through the notes, she stumbled upon a small, folded piece of paper wedged between the pages. Unfolding it, she saw a hand-drawn map, marked with symbols she didn't recognize, but that made her feel like she was on the verge of something big. The map was accompanied by a brief line of text that made her stomach churn. "Find the vault. It's the key to everything." Lily's breath caught in her throat. The vault. What did that mean? And why was it hidden in this old military tank? She closed the notebook with a snap, her mind racing. This wasn't just a restoration job. She had no idea what kind of history she had stumbled upon, but there was no turning back now. Her fingers shook as she placed the notebook on the workbench. What was this tank, really? Was it just a war relic? Or something more, something that could change everything? She had to find out. With renewed determination, Lily wiped her hands on a rag and stood tall. She wasn't just going to rebuild this tank. She was going to uncover its secrets. And whatever she found, she was going to make sure it changed her life. Lily sat on the workbench, staring at the leather-bound notebook in front of her. The weight of the words on the map. "Find the vault. It's the key to everything," echoed in her mind. What did it all mean? And how was a simple tank connected to something so significant? She stood up, pacing in front of the tank as the sunlight filtered in through the dusty windows of her garage. Her mind was a whirlwind of questions, and she felt more determined than ever to figure out the truth behind the tank. She had always believed there was more to things than what met the eye, and now she had proof. Her hand hovered over the tank's body, tracing the cold, worn metal as she considered her next move. The map was the first real clue she had uncovered, but it didn't give her much to go on. Vault? What vault? And why was it hidden in a tank? Lily decided to take a break from the internal mystery and focus on the physical. The tank had been sitting idle for years, and she wasn't about to let whatever secrets it held stay locked inside forever. It was time to dive deeper. She pulled a flashlight from the workbench and crawled under the tank, her heart pounding as she scrutinized every corner. Her hands were slick with sweat, but she ignored it, determined to leave no stone unturned. She spent the next few hours disassembling more of the tank, removing panels and checking the engine. All the while, her thoughts darted back to the notebook. Who had hidden the map there? And why? The compartment beneath the seat was clearly meant to be concealed, but how had it ended up in her hands? The notebook's contents were so specific. Too specific to just be a random journal of a forgotten soldier. As she worked, Lily's curiosity grew. She had always loved restoring things. Cars, motorcycles, even an old tractor here and there, but this was different. There was a sense of urgency, a sense of being pulled into something much larger than herself. She wasn't just fixing a broken-down piece of military equipment. She was starting to feel like she was unraveling a mystery that could change everything. By the time the late afternoon light began to fade, Lily had uncovered a series of small hidden compartments on the tank's exterior. She didn't know what she was expecting, but what she found shocked her to her core. Behind a false panel at the back of the tank, hidden within a reinforced compartment, she found another object, a small metal box, sealed shut. It was unlike anything she had ever seen, too well preserved, too intentional to be an afterthought. The box was about the size of a cigar box, but was heavy and solid, its surface marked with symbols she didn't recognize. Her hands shook as she lifted it out of the compartment. She wasn't sure what she had just found, but she knew it was important. The metal was cold against her fingers, and the weight of it felt like a secret in itself. She moved quickly back to the workbench, and with a quiet breath, pried the box open. Inside, she found a collection of old documents, photographs, and what appeared to be more maps. But it was the photograph that caught her attention, a grainy black and white image of a group of soldiers standing in front of the very tank she was restoring. The men in the photo were in uniform, their faces hardened by time and war, but one man stood out to her. He was young, with striking eyes, and the resemblance was uncanny. The man in the photograph looked just like the old veteran who had visited her shop earlier, the man who had dropped the tank off. Lily's heart pounded. Was this a coincidence? Could it be the same man? Or was there something more to this connection? She turned the photo over, her breath catching in her throat, when she saw the writing on the back. For Caleb. May this tank carry our legacy. Caleb. The name felt heavy on her tongue. It was the same name mentioned in the notebook. It was too much of a coincidence to ignore. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but they were incomplete fragments of a history buried under layers of time, secrecy, and war. Lily had thought this tank was just another broken machine. But now, it was becoming clear that this tank was much more than that. It was a key to a story long forgotten, and it was her job to unlock it. Her thoughts raced as she considered her next move. She wasn't sure how or why this tank was tied to the veteran she had met, but she was beginning to realize that the answers weren't just within the tank itself. They were part of a larger puzzle, one that had been hidden for decades. And if she was going to solve it, she would need to dig deeper, both into the history of the tank and into the lives of those who had been involved. But first, she needed to talk to Benjamin Rhodes. He was the key to understanding what she had uncovered, and the more she thought about it, the more she realized that the answers she was looking for might be closer than she had ever imagined. The following day, as Lily sat hunched over the tank, her hands covered in grease and her mind racing with questions, the quiet hum of the garage was broken by the sharp sound of a car pulling into the gravel driveway. She glanced up from the tank, wiping her hands on a rag as she squinted toward the dust cloud rising in the distance. Her heart skipped a beat. It was him, the man she had seen standing in front of her shop a few days ago, Benjamin Rhodes. The old veteran who had dropped off the tank and left her with nothing but cryptic words and an old manila envelope. He hadn't called or warned her he was coming, but there he was, just like in the photograph. Benjamin stepped out of the car with a slow, deliberate movement. His worn leather jacket seemed to swallow his thin frame, and his silver hair shimmered in the morning light. But it was his eyes, tired yet sharp, that gave him away. He had seen too much in his time. His hands, weathered and calloused, grasped a well-worn satchel. Lily stood up from the workbench, wiping her palms on her jeans as she braced herself. She had been expecting a visit, but she had no idea what to say to him. "Benjamin," she greeted him, keeping her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "Miss Carter," he replied with a slight nod, his voice low but warm, like a man who had lived through a lifetime of hardship and had nothing left to prove. He walked slowly towards her, his eyes scanning the garage with a kind of reverence, landing briefly on the tank as he reached the workbench. It was clear he had seen it before, just like the photo in the box. "You've been busy, I see," he said quietly, his gaze lingering on the exposed tank. "Looks like she's in good hands." Lily nodded, unsure how to start. She didn't want to seem too eager, but there was so much she needed to ask him. "I've been going through some things. Maps, photos. There's a connection between this tank and someone named Caleb," she said, the name hanging between them like a ghost. Benjamin's face faltered, his eyes darkening for a brief moment. He took a deep breath before responding, his voice barely above a whisper. "Caleb was my son," he said, the weight of the words sinking into the air between them. Lily's heart stuttered. It all clicked into place, the resemblance in the photograph, the name on the back. It wasn't just a coincidence. The tank, the maps, the mysterious compartment, and now Caleb's name. Everything was tied together in a way she hadn't fully understood until now. "Caleb was your son?" Lily repeated, her voice faltering. She could feel the weight of the question she wanted to ask, but she hesitated. It was too personal, too raw. "What happened to him?" Benjamin's face hardened at the question, his gaze dropping to the ground. He took a long pause before he spoke again, and when he did, it was as though the words were pulled from deep within him. "He was a good kid," Benjamin said, his voice thick with emotion. "Bought that tank when he was just a teenager, wanted to restore it with me. We spent summers working on it together, getting it into shape. He had big plans for it. Then, one day, he left. Joined the army. Said he wanted to do something bigger than fixing cars. Something that mattered." Lily felt a pang of sympathy, but Benjamin wasn't finished. His voice broke slightly as he continued. "He went to Iraq in 2004. I didn't see him again after that. The army sent me the news. He was killed in action, and when I came back to find the tank, I just couldn't bring myself to finish it. I couldn't even touch it. So, I put it behind my barn and left it there for years, hoping one day someone would come along and give it the life he couldn't. I guess I was waiting for someone who understood what it really meant." Lily didn't know what to say. She just stood there, her throat tight, feeling the weight of his grief. She couldn't even begin to imagine what it must have been like for him to lose a son whose dream was now tied to a project that felt so much bigger than a tank. The tank wasn't just a machine. It was the last part of Caleb that Benjamin had left. "I didn't know how to bring myself to restore it," Benjamin continued, his eyes never leaving the tank. "It wasn't just a project. It was Caleb's legacy. And when I saw that you had bought it, I knew it wasn't just about the money. You were meant to finish what we started." Lily felt the weight of his words, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She wasn't just working on a tank anymore. She was now part of something far bigger. This wasn't just about restoring a vehicle. It was about restoring a father's memory, a son's dream, and a legacy that had been shattered by loss. She took a deep breath, her voice soft but firm. "I'll finish it, Benjamin. I promise you, I'll make sure it's done right. I'll make sure Caleb's dream lives on." Benjamin's eyes softened, and for the first time, Lily saw a glimpse of peace in them. He handed her the manila envelope she had seen before, the one she had found in the tank, and this time, she didn't hesitate to take it. "Inside," he said, "you'll find everything you need to finish what Caleb started. The plans, the blueprints, the parts list. He left them all for whoever would come along. He wanted the tank to carry something more than just a history of war. He wanted it to carry a story of hope." Lily nodded and took the envelope, her heart heavy with the responsibility she now carried. She wasn't just restoring a tank. She was restoring a family's history, a memory lost in time, and she would do whatever it took to honor that. As Benjamin turned to leave, he paused, giving her one last look. "If you find anything strange in that tank, don't be afraid to dig deeper," he added. Caleb left more than just blueprints behind. He knew something others didn't. Lily's mind raced as she watched him walk away. What did he mean? What had Caleb known? And what was still hidden inside this tank? The answer, she knew, was just waiting to be uncovered. The evening air had grown colder. As Lily sat alone in the garage, the manila envelope from Benjamin Rhodes open in front of her. The blueprints Caleb had left behind were carefully spread out on the workbench, the edges slightly curling from years of being tucked away. Lily stared at the intricate designs, each line and curve marking the tank's unique features. But it wasn't the schematics that had her captivated. It was the last page of the document, a simple note in Caleb's handwriting. Beneath the surface, find the vault. Her mind raced as she reread the words. Find the vault. What could it mean? Caleb had clearly been focused on something bigger than the tank itself. He'd hidden something, a secret buried deep within the machine. But where? Lily glanced at the tank, its imposing presence looming over her in the corner of the shop. She had already taken apart most of the exterior and much of the interior, but there was still so much of it left to explore. She had only just begun to understand that the tank was more than just metal and machinery. It was a puzzle, and Caleb's words were the key. Her fingers were trembling as she pushed the blueprints aside and pulled herself up to her feet. The heavy metallic smell of oil and rust filled the room as she grabbed her flashlight. If there was a vault hidden inside this tank, she was going to find it, no matter how long it took. The tank's interior was mostly gutted, and Lily had already torn apart the engine and the fuel system, but something about the hull still felt too solid, too unyielding. She had the sinking feeling that there was something she hadn't uncovered yet, something critical. She crawled underneath it, flashlight in hand, shining the beam along every inch of the undercarriage. Nothing out of the ordinary. But then, she spotted it. A small, almost imperceptible seam in the metal just above the main chassis. It was faint, barely visible, but it was there like a hidden latch waiting to be activated. Her heart raced. This was it. This had to be the spot Caleb had been referring to. With careful hands, Lily began to work, scraping away at the rusted edges, pushing against the metal until the seam gave way with a quiet pop. The panel moved slightly, just enough for Lily to wedge her fingers underneath and pull. The metal groaned, a deep, resonant sound that sent a shiver down her spine. The compartment beneath was dark, but Lily didn't hesitate. She reached inside, feeling around, until her fingers brushed against something hard and cold. A lock. It was an old-fashioned lock, the kind she hadn't seen in years. Her pulse quickened as she pulled it free from its rusted casing, dust and grime scattering into the air. She hadn't expected to find a physical lock. She had thought the vault might be more abstract, some kind of hidden compartment or secret compartment buried deep within the layers. But this was real. Her mind raced. A lock. This wasn't just a treasure hunt. This was deliberate. Someone had put this vault here for a reason. Someone who didn't want the contents to be easily discovered. The secrets inside this tank weren't just about history. They were about something far more valuable. Lily set to work on the lock, careful but determined. She was a mechanic, not a locksmith, but she'd worked on her fair share of stubborn parts and rusted bolts in her life. After a few minutes of fiddling with the keyhole, the lock clicked open. A wave of dust hit her as she opened the compartment. Inside, there was a small metal chest, scratched and worn, but still intact. The chest was cold to the touch, and its weight seemed to pull her towards it, as if urging her to uncover its secrets. Lily opened it cautiously, her fingers hovering over the chest's lid. When she lifted it, a low, creaking sound filled the air. Inside, there was more than she expected. The chest was filled with old documents, more maps, photographs, and a set of small metal items wrapped in old, stained cloth. But it was one item in particular that caught her eye: a small, ornate key. Unlike any key she had seen before, it was intricately carved, with designs that seemed to shimmer in the dim light of the garage. Her fingers wrapped around it, and she couldn't help but feel a sense of finality. This key was the real treasure, the real key to whatever Caleb had hidden. She didn't know what it unlocked, but she could feel the weight of it in her hand. Her heart raced as she lifted the remaining items from the chest. The photos were of soldiers, some young, some older, all standing near tanks, some in military uniforms, others in civilian clothes. And among the photographs was a set of coordinates. Coordinates that, when she traced them on the map Caleb had drawn, led to a location deep in the wilderness. Her mind reeled. This wasn't just about a tank, or a story about war. This was something else. A secret buried deep in history, one that had been hidden for decades, and Lily had just uncovered it. But as she looked at the coordinates, a new realization hit her. Whoever had hidden these secrets was still watching. She wasn't the only one interested in this vault. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sudden sound of a car pulling into the driveway. A familiar sound, but one that filled her with a sense of dread. She knew who it was before the door even opened. Shady figures. The ones who had been lurking in the background, asking too many questions, pushing too hard. They knew something. They were onto her. The stakes had just gotten higher, and Lily knew that whatever was inside this tank, she wasn't the only one looking for it. The garage door creaked open, and Lily's heart dropped as the figure stepped inside. It was a man she hadn't seen before, tall, dressed in a dark suit, with a pair of sleek sunglasses perched on his nose, even though it was late afternoon. His presence felt out of place here, among the grease stains and wrenches. He glanced around, his eyes scanning the cluttered space with a practiced indifference, before locking onto Lily. "You must be the one working on the tank," he said, his voice smooth, almost too smooth, like he was trying to sound casual. Lily wiped her hands on her overalls, trying to steady her breath. "Yeah, that's me. What do you want?" The man took a step forward, his polished shoes clicking against the concrete floor. "I'm with the Department of Defense," he said, flashing a badge that didn't quite feel real. "I've been asked to investigate the history of that tank." Lily raised an eyebrow. "The Department of Defense?" She wasn't buying it. "Is that supposed to impress me?" The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I don't expect it to. But I'm afraid you've got yourself involved in something bigger than a simple restoration project." Lily's gut twisted. She had known this was coming. The questions, the attention, but this was more than she'd bargained for. She had been hoping to uncover something important, something worth the risk. But now that the stakes were rising, she wasn't so sure. "What exactly are you investigating?" she asked, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The man's gaze never wavered. "The tank, Miss Carter. Specifically, the contents inside. You've uncovered something, haven't you? Something you shouldn't have." Lily's hand instinctively went to the small metal chest, now resting on her workbench, still open from her last discovery. The key, the photographs, the map, the damn coordinates. She hadn't told anyone about them yet, only Benjamin had a clue. But this man was pressing her now, as if he already knew everything. "You're looking for something, aren't you?" the man continued, his tone growing more insistent. "You've found it, haven't you? Those maps, the photographs, the vault beneath the tank. They're not just historical artifacts. They're linked to something much bigger, something classified." Lily's heart beat faster, the weight of his words pressing on her chest. "I'm just trying to fix the damn thing," she muttered, but it sounded weak even to her. "I didn't ask for any of this." The man leaned in slightly, his gaze sharp. "Oh, but you're already in it, Miss Carter. And once you've opened that box, there's no turning back." The chill of his words sank in. There was no turning back now. She knew it, and he knew it. But what did he really want from her? She wasn't about to just hand over what she had uncovered, not yet, anyway. Whatever was inside this tank had clearly drawn attention, dangerous attention. "Who else is looking for this?" she asked, trying to regain some control. Her voice was steady, but inside, she was fighting to stay calm. The man took a slow step back, his smile never fading. "That's not a question you want to ask. It's best you don't get involved, Miss Carter. You're out of your depth." Lily's fingers brushed the edge of the manila envelope. She thought of Benjamin's words, his quiet plea to finish what Caleb had started, to uncover the truth. She wasn't going to let some suit in a bad mood scare her off, not when she was so close to figuring it all out. "I'll decide what I want to get involved in," she said, her tone now colder. "Now, if you don't mind, I've got work to do." The man hesitated for a moment, his eyes narrowing, before he straightened up and backed away. "Be careful, Miss Carter. Some doors are better left closed." With that, he turned and left, the sound of his footsteps fading as he disappeared into the night. The garage fell into a heavy silence once more. Lily stood still for a moment, her mind racing. Whoever this man was, he wasn't part of the Department of Defense. He was lying. But why? And why had he shown up now? She glanced at the metal chest, the maps, the photographs, and then at the coordinates Caleb had left behind. Whoever was after this tank, they weren't just interested in its historical value. There was something far more dangerous at play here. Something that could change everything. But Lily wasn't going to back down. She couldn't. She had made a promise to Benjamin, to Caleb, and she wasn't going to let anyone, not even shady government agents, take that away. Her phone buzzed on the workbench, breaking her concentration. She picked it up and saw a new message from an unknown number. "I know what you found. Don't trust anyone. Meet me at the coordinates. Tomorrow night." Lily's stomach churned. Who was this, and how did they know about the tank? The investigation was only just beginning. And now, Lily was in it deeper than ever. The day dragged on, the weight of the message gnawing at Lily's mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking on a razor's edge. Every step she took, every decision, felt like it was pulling her deeper into a world of secrets and danger that she hadn't bargained for. The man from the Department of Defense, the cryptic message, the constant tension around the tank it was, all starting to converge into something far larger than a simple restoration project. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lily found herself standing at the workbench again. The metal chest from the tank now closed, but its contents still heavy in her mind. The key, the photographs, the map with those haunting coordinates, and that damn message. The coordinates were somewhere deep in the wilderness, miles away from civilization. It wasn't a place she'd ever been, but that didn't matter. She knew she couldn't ignore it. Whoever this person was, they knew exactly what she had found, and they were making it clear that they expected her to follow the trail. Lily grabbed her jacket, slinging it over her shoulders, and reached for the keys to her truck. There was no turning back now. She had no idea what she was walking into, but she knew she had to go. She wasn't the type to be intimidated, and no cryptic threat was going to stop her from getting to the bottom of this. By the time Lily reached the edge of town, the moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the darkened roads. The headlights of her truck cut through the thickening darkness, but her thoughts were miles away from the dusty highway. She was heading into the unknown, and the realization hit her. She didn't know who to trust anymore. The veteran Benjamin had trusted her with Caleb's legacy. But now, she was starting to wonder if it was all a setup, if she had been led into this mess from the start. The dirt road that led to the coordinates wasn't much more than a forgotten trail, barely wide enough for her truck. The trees on either side loomed like silent watchers, and the sound of crickets filled the air. The further she drove, the more unsettled she became. The road twisted and turned, leading her deeper into the wilderness. And then, there it was, a clearing. And in the middle of it, a small shack, barely visible under the thick canopy of trees. There was no sign of life, no lights on, nothing that would indicate this place was anything more than a dilapidated ruin. Lily pulled the truck to a stop and sat in silence for a moment, staring at the shack. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Whoever had sent the message was here waiting. She stepped out of the truck, the cool night air biting at her skin as she approached the shack. Each step felt heavier, the silence pressing down on her, and with every crackling of twigs underfoot, her nerves tightened. She reached for the door of the shack, but before she could touch the handle, the door creaked open on its own. Out of the darkness stepped a familiar figure, the man from the Department of Defense. He wasn't wearing sunglasses this time, but his presence was just as unnerving. "So, you came," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. "I was hoping you would." Lily didn't move, her eyes narrowing. "You're not from the Department of Defense, are you?" The man smirked. a hint of amusement crossing his face. "I never said I was. But you're quick. I'll give you that." Her hand instinctively went to the keys in her pocket, her mind racing. She had to stay calm. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear creeping in. "I want what's inside that tank," he said, his eyes locked on hers. "You've stumbled onto something that shouldn't be disturbed, Miss Carter. It's bigger than you, bigger than Caleb, and if you think you're going to walk away with it, you're wrong." Lily's breath caught. "What do you mean by that?" The man took a step forward, his hands clasped in front of him. "That tank holds more than just history. It holds answers. Answers to questions that have been buried for decades. You think it's about some military relic, but it's not. The tank is connected to a covert operation. There are people who will do anything to get their hands on it, and now you've got it." Lily stood her ground, her mind spinning with his words. "You're not making any sense. Who are you really working for? What's inside the tank?" He took a deep breath, his face darkening. "That's not your concern. What's important is that you understand the danger. You're not safe. None of us are. The people I work for, they don't care about who gets hurt in the process. They just want the secrets." "Is that why you showed up?" Lily demanded. "To intimidate me? Because it's not working." The man's smile faded, replaced by something colder. "It's not about intimidation. It's about survival. You've seen things you shouldn't have seen. You've opened doors you shouldn't have opened. And now you're a part of something much bigger than you realize." He paused, his gaze hardening. "So here's the deal. You give me the tank and its contents, and I can make sure you walk away from this unharmed. You'll be free to go back to your little shop, keep fixing cars, and pretend none of this ever happened." Lily's heart pounded in her chest. This was it. The moment where everything she had uncovered would either cost her everything or change her life forever. But she knew, deep down, that she couldn't let this go. Whatever was inside that tank, whatever secret it held, it was part of something she couldn't walk away from. "No," Lily said, her voice firm, a determination she hadn't known she had surfacing. "I'm not giving you anything. You're going to have to take it from me." The man's eyes flashed with a mix of anger and something else recognition. "You've made a mistake, Miss Carter," he said quietly. "But I'll give you one last chance. Don't make me regret this." Before she could respond, the man turned and disappeared into the shadows of the shack, leaving her standing there alone, her thoughts racing. Lily wasn't sure what the man had meant by his cryptic words, but one thing was clear. The stakes had just gotten much higher. Whoever was after the tank wasn't going to let her walk away without a fight, and Lily Carter wasn't the type to back down. Lily didn't return to the shack that night. She couldn't, not after the man's warning. The confrontation had shaken her, but it had also solidified something within her. There was no turning back. Whatever secrets the tank held, whatever dangerous people were after it, she wasn't going to back down. She drove back to her shop in silence, the truck's headlights slicing through the darkness as her mind churned with thoughts. The man, whoever he was, had dropped a bombshell. The tank wasn't just a relic. It wasn't just a symbol of war. It was the key to something far more dangerous and valuable than she had ever imagined. Lily pulled into the shop's parking lot and turned off the truck. The garage was quiet, the way it always was at night. It felt almost sacred in its stillness, like the last place where everything made sense. But tonight, nothing made sense. She stepped out of the truck, the cool air biting at her skin, and walked toward the garage with heavy steps. The metal chest was still on the workbench, its contents scattered in disarray. The photographs, the maps, and the cryptic messages Caleb had left behind it all felt more real now, more dangerous. As Lily ran her fingers across the documents, one photo caught her eye, a photograph of Caleb, a young man with a quiet grin standing next to the tank. His eyes were full of life, full of hope. It was hard to imagine him as a soldier, someone caught in the web of a covert operation, someone whose death had led to this tangled mess. But there was one thing she knew for certain. Caleb had been a part of something much bigger than himself, something that he hadn't fully understood, just like her. Lily picked up the map again, studying it with a renewed sense of purpose. The coordinates, the ones that had brought her to the shack, weren't random. They led somewhere important. The question was, what was buried there? Was it more than just a cache of old military documents? Or was it something that could change everything? The sound of a car door slamming outside broke her train of thought. She looked up, her heart leaping in her chest. Had someone followed her? Was it the man? Or was it someone else entirely? She grabbed the flashlight from the workbench and crept toward the front of the garage, peeking out through the small window. Her breath caught as she saw the figure standing by the door of the shop, none other than Benjamin Rodas. Her pulse quickened. What was he doing here? She hadn't expected him to show up tonight, not after their conversation earlier. But here he was, standing in the shadows with an almost unnatural stillness. Lily opened the door cautiously. "Benjamin?" she called out, trying to keep her voice steady. He turned slowly, his face lit by the faint glow of the streetlights. There was something different about him tonight. He looked older, wearier, like the weight of years of grief had finally caught up with him. "I'm sorry to show up like this," Benjamin said, his voice quiet. "But I needed to talk to you." Lily stepped outside, the night air cool against her skin. "You don't have to apologize. What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." Benjamin's gaze flickered to the garage, then back to Lily. "I've been thinking a lot about Caleb, about the tank. There's something you need to know, something I should have told you before. But I didn't know if I could trust anyone with it." Lily frowned, her heart pounding. "What do you mean? What is it?" Benjamin hesitated, his eyes drifting toward the distant trees, as if making sure no one was watching. "You've only seen part of the story. The tank isn't just a piece of history, and Caleb's notes, those blueprints, those plans aren't just designs for restoring it. They were a map to something hidden." Lily's pulse quickened. "What is it? What's hidden?" Benjamin's eyes darkened. "A weapon," he said, his voice low. "A weapon unlike any the world has ever seen. It's buried at those coordinates you found. Caleb knew about it, but he didn't want it. He never did. That's why he left those clues behind. He wanted to make sure it stayed hidden, safe. He believed the world wasn't ready for it." Lily felt a chill run down her spine. A weapon? What was he talking about? This was no longer just about a tank. It was about something that could change the course of history, and someone didn't want it to be found. "You're telling me Caleb knew about this?" Lily whispered, her mind racing. "And he hid it there? Why didn't you tell me before?" Benjamin looked pained, his eyes clouded with regret. "I couldn't risk anyone knowing what he had uncovered. He was trying to protect it. I was too afraid to tell you. Afraid of what might happen if the wrong people found out you were getting involved. The wrong people have been looking for that tank for years, and now they know you have it." Lily stepped back, her heart pounding in her chest. "The man who came to my shop, the one who said he was from the Department of Defense, he's one of them, isn't he?" Benjamin nodded grimly. "He works for them, but he's not the worst of it. There are far more dangerous people out there, people who would stop at nothing to get their hands on what Caleb buried. And now, they know you're involved." Lily's thoughts spun. She had been trying to fix a broken tank, but now it seemed like she had unlocked a Pandora's box, a weapon that could destroy everything she had fought for. "There's no going back, is there?" Lily said, the weight of the situation finally hitting her. "No," Benjamin said, his voice heavy. "You're in this now, whether you like it or not. But you're not alone. I'll help you. Whatever it takes." Lily nodded, her resolve hardening. She had come too far to back down now. But she was no longer just restoring a tank. She was fighting for something much bigger. The secrets buried in that tank weren't just about war, they were about the future. And she would protect it, no matter the cost. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air as Lily sat in the garage, staring at the tank. The engine lay in pieces on the workbench, but it was the contents of the metal chest buried secrets and ancient photographs that kept her awake at night. The world she had once known had splintered into 1,000 dangerous possibilities, and every path forward seemed darker than the last. Benjamin's warning still echoed in her ears. He had tried to prepare her for what was coming, but now that the stakes had been made clear, she had no idea what to do with it all. Her entire life had been spent restoring things, bringing them back to life. But this wasn't just about fixing a tank. It was about deciding whether to unleash a powerful force that could change the world. The secret Caleb had buried inside the tank wasn't just a weapon. It was a symbol, a key to something much larger. What was buried out there in the wilderness wasn't just military tech. It was history, a dangerous history that had been kept hidden for a reason. She had already uncovered so much, but the most important part, the part that could alter everything, was still ahead of her. Lily knew she couldn't make this decision alone. Her phone buzzed on the workbench, startling her from her thoughts. She grabbed it, hoping it was Benjamin, but it was a message from an unknown number. She read the words quickly, her heart racing. "It's time. The others are closing in. Meet us at the coordinates, don't wait." She stared at the screen, her pulse quickening. Was this the same person who had sent the previous message? Was it another threat? Or had they finally figured out where she was going? Lily exhaled slowly, pushing back the surge of panic. She couldn't ignore it. She had to go. The message was clear: whatever was out there needed to be found, and she was the one who was meant to find it. She had come this far. There was no turning back now. But even as the decision formed in her mind, she realized something deeper. The weight of what she was about to uncover wasn't just physical, it was moral. Was it right to expose this secret? To let the world know about the weapon hidden within the tank? What if, by opening this door, she was unleashing chaos instead of restoring peace? She thought of Caleb's words, the ones he had written in the notebook, the message that had been left for whoever came after him. Find the vault. It's the key to everything. But had he meant to find it for the world's benefit or for his own survival? Had he believed that by hiding this weapon, he was doing humanity a service? Or was he simply a young man caught in a situation far beyond his control? Lily had always been the one to fix things. She had taken broken cars and brought them back to life. She had taken her father's legacy and kept it alive, even when the world seemed to be turning its back on people like her. But this was different. This wasn't a broken car. It was the fate of the world, sitting at the edge of a decision she wasn't prepared to make. "Think, Lily," she muttered to herself, her hands trembling. What would Caleb have done? The sound of the front door opening broke her concentration. She turned quickly, her eyes locking with Benjamin's. He stood in the doorway, his face grim, his eyes shadowed by years of regret. "I knew you'd go," he said, his voice low. "I can't tell you what the right choice is. I can't even tell you if there is a right choice. But I can tell you this: you can't make this decision alone. You need someone who knows the danger that's waiting out there. Someone who can help you understand what's at stake." Lily met his gaze. "What do you mean? What's waiting out there?" Benjamin walked toward her, his steps slow, deliberate. "The people who are looking for that weapon. They don't just want it for power. They want to control it. They want to use it to control the world. If you go out there and uncover it, you could change everything. But the wrong hands could turn it into a nightmare. They'll stop at nothing to get it." Her chest tightened as Benjamin's words sunk in. He was right. She hadn't just stumbled upon a relic. She had found the potential for mass destruction, something that, if released, could shape the course of history. The power was both terrifying and exhilarating. Lily exhaled slowly, weighing the choices before her. She could go to the coordinates, expose the truth, and let the world deal with the consequences, or she could bury the secret once and for all, just as Caleb had tried to do. "Do you know what's really out there?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Benjamin hesitated, his expression darkening. "I've never seen it, but I know it's bad. It's worse than you think. It was meant to stay buried. Caleb and I, we wanted it that way. But now it's your decision. You can either let the world know the truth, or protect it from itself." Lily's mind raced as the weight of his words pressed down on her. She had always believed in restoring things, in fixing what was broken. But this was a decision she couldn't take lightly. "I don't know if I can make this choice," she admitted. "How do you choose something like this? How do you choose between saving the world or protecting it from something that might destroy it?" Benjamin stepped closer, his eyes softening. You don't. You just do what you think is right. Whatever that is. Lily took a deep breath. She had spent her whole life working on other people's dreams, restoring the past and fixing the broken. But now, for the first time, she had the power to decide the future. The decision wasn't easy. It was never going to be. But there was no turning back. She picked up the map, the coordinates staring back at her, and made up her mind. I'm going, she said firmly. But I'm not doing this alone. If I'm going to open this door, I need to know what's on the other side. I need your help, Benjamin. His face softened with a hint of relief. You've got it. And just like that, the final choice was made. The next chapter of the story would begin at the coordinates. Whatever lay ahead, Lily Carter was ready to face it head on. The sun had barely risen when Lily and Benjamin pulled up to the edge of the wilderness. The coordinates had led them to a dense forest, a place so remote that the hum of civilization seemed miles away. As the truck's tires crunched over the dirt path, Lily's mind was sharp, but her stomach twisted in knots. The weight of the decision they had made the night before settled heavily on her shoulders. It wasn't just a matter of unlocking a vault. It was about what lay beyond it, what Caleb had tried to bury, what the world had never been meant to know. And now, it was on Lily's shoulders to decide what would happen next. Ready? Benjamin's voice broke through her thoughts as he cut the engine. His eyes were tired, but there was a glint of resolve behind them. He wasn't just here for Caleb anymore. He was here for redemption, for the future. I don't think anyone is ever really ready for something like this, Lily replied, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. But I can't back down now. She grabbed the small metal chest from the back of the truck and slung it over her shoulder. The key, the maps, the photographs, everything had led them here. Everything had brought them to this moment, this clearing in the forest, where secrets older than the world they knew were buried beneath the soil. The wind whispered through the trees, the silence broken only by the sound of their boots crunching on the dry leaves. Benjamin walked beside her, his presence grounding her as they reached the spot marked by the coordinates. She could feel the earth beneath her boots, the weight of history pressing down, and yet it all felt so eerily calm, as if the world was holding its breath, waiting for them to uncover the truth. Lily knelt down, brushing aside the thick layer of leaves and dirt. Her hands shook as she worked, but her focus never wavered. After a few moments, her fingers brushed against something hard, a metal hatch, partially hidden by the undergrowth. She cleared away the last of the dirt and found a small, rusted handle. This is it, she whispered, turning to Benjamin, who nodded silently. With a deep breath, Lily gripped the handle and pulled. The hatch groaned as it creaked open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into the darkness below. The air that rushed up from the opening was damp and cold, carrying the smell of earth and old stone. She looked down into the abyss, unsure of what awaited them, but she knew they couldn't turn back now. She grabbed the flashlight from her bag and clicked it on, the beam cutting through the dark. As they descended, the staircase felt ancient, its stone steps worn smooth by time. Every step they took echoed in the silence, a reminder that they were walking into a hidden part of history, one that had been waiting to be discovered. At the bottom of the stairs, the beam of the flashlight illuminated a vast underground chamber. It was enormous, large enough to hold a small warehouse. The walls were lined with shelves filled with dusty crates and long-forgotten boxes. But in the center of the room was the most striking thing of all. A large, rusted container, unlike anything Lily had ever seen before. It was heavily secured, with locks and chains wrapped around it, and a series of strange markings on its surface. Lily's breath caught in her throat. This was it. This was the vault Caleb had hidden. This was what they had risked everything to find. Benjamin stepped forward, his face grim. This is it. The weapon. Lily swallowed, her throat dry. What is it? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Benjamin hesitated for a moment before answering, his eyes darkening. I don't know exactly, but it's something that could change the world. It was created during the Cold War, a project that was supposed to be kept hidden at all costs. The tank, The vault, Caleb's notes, all of it, was part of a mission to ensure that it stayed buried. Lily stepped closer to the container, her fingers brushing the surface of the metal. The markings were strange symbols, like a language that was just beyond her understanding. "What do we do now?" she asked, turning back to Benjamin. He looked at her, his eyes filled with the same uncertainty that she felt in her chest. "It's up to you, Lily. This is your decision. You can open it, expose it to the world, or you can seal it away. Either way, the world will never be the same." Lily's heart pounded in her chest. She had spent so much of her life restoring things, fixing broken machines, bringing them back to life, but this was different. This wasn't just about fixing something. This was about deciding the fate of the world. The weapon inside that vault was powerful, and the wrong hands could destroy everything. But keeping it hidden could create a future just as dangerous. She looked at Benjamin one last time, her resolve hardening. She wasn't going to let the world be controlled by fear, by people who thought they could own the future. Lily reached down and took the key from her pocket, the same key she had found hidden in the tank. It fit perfectly into the lock. The sound of the lock clicking open was deafening in the quiet chamber. Slowly, cautiously, Lily pushed the heavy lid open. Inside the vault was a set of documents, a few large crates, and a series of high-tech devices unlike anything she had ever seen. But there was something else, something even more shocking. A file, labeled Project Legacy. Lily reached for the file, her hands trembling. She opened it slowly, the pages yellowed with age. As she read, her heart raced, her mind struggling to comprehend the gravity of the situation. Project Legacy was a plan not just for a weapon but for something more, something that could alter the course of history itself. The documents detailed plans for mind-altering technology, military dominance, and a future controlled by a single group of individuals. The weapon wasn't just physical, it was mental. It had the potential to control people's thoughts, their actions. It was something far more terrifying than Lily could have ever imagined. "Benjamin," her voice shook as she read the final lines of the file. "This isn't just a weapon, it's a way to control the world." Benjamin stepped forward, his eyes wide as he read over her shoulder. He took a deep breath, his face pale. "This is worse than I thought. It can't be allowed to get out. It can't be used." Lily closed the file, her decision made. The world couldn't know about this. It couldn't fall into the wrong hands. With a final glance at Benjamin, she made up her mind. "We're not opening this to the world. We're closing it. We're keeping it buried." As she closed the vault, sealing it back with the lock and chain, Lily knew that she had made the right choice. The headlines wouldn't carry this story. The world wouldn't know about what lay hidden beneath the surface. But that was for the best. Some secrets were too dangerous to share. The only thing she could do now was make sure it stayed that way. Forever.